So hello everyone and welcome back. So in this video I'm going to showing you how we can create dynamic table component in React. So as you can see here we have the name and email. Alright, so this data is going to come from the JSON placeholder.typecode.com here. This is the name and this is the email. Alright, so for example I want to add one column here which is let's say pawn. All right, and basically to add a pawn we can just simply copy paste this, and the heading is gonna be whatever you want. For example, let's say pawn, and this value is basically this key. All right, just make sure you have same name. So I want to grab the pawn, so I can just set the value here to pawn. Okay, if I save, now we should have the pawn here. How simple is that? So in this video we're going to create this component here. So really simple basically. And yeah, let's get started. Alright, so in here I've already generated create React app. So now we can just remove couple file that we don't need. So I'm gonna remove the, let's say app.ts here. And let's logo, setup, everything here. Let's delete that. So the app is going to be crashed. Let's go to index and we are going to remove the report web vitals, the index, and down here. So now save. It's going to be still crashed. Let's go to app and I'm going to put just h1 here. Let's say hello. Something wrong, the logo, of course. Let's remove, and here we go. So now let's fetch the JSON placeholder API here. So I'm gonna use Axios basically. You can use fetch, but I'm gonna use Axios basically. So yarn at Axios. Alright, so it's done. Now as you can see in package.json file we have this Axios. Alright, so what we need to do first is I'm going to create a get request. So we can use get request inside a use effect. So I'm going to create use effect in here, and then let's say Axios. Just make sure you import from Axios up here. So let me do Axios and I'm going to put the URL here. Alright, so let's just copy and paste that in here. So it's going to be a return a promise, so you need to handle the promise. So we need to say .then we get the response, and then here I'm going to put the data into the state. I'm going to create state here. So let's give a name data table, and let's say set data table. All right, so set it equals to use state. By default, let's set into empty array. Alright, so in here we are going to set the data table into res.data. Okay, basically we set this data table into this data from this API. If something wrong, so we need to handle that. So if catch, and we get the error, and then I'm going to just log the error. Let's say error. Alright, so now save, and I'm going to console log the data table so we can see the data. Okay, so if I save and take a look and this inspect and console, I'm going to make it bigger basically. All right, so if I save, and as you can see here we have 10 data. Yeah, here we go. We have the name, email, etc, etc. Okay, cool. So next let's create the table component in here. So inside the source folder I'm going to create a folder called components, and inside the components I'm going to create basically file, let's say table.js file, and also I'm going to create the CSS in here. Let's say table.css. Alright, so in table here I'm going to generate functional path component, and I'm going to do, let's say, table here. Okay, so in app here, instead of hello, I'm going to put a dynamic table, and I'm going to render the table component in here. Let's say table. All right. So if I save, now we should see the dynamic table and this table here. So now let's create the table. Let's go back to the table component here, and in here we're going to create the table. Let's say table, and in table basically we have the h and t body down here. Okay, so let's say t body, and in the h here we have the r, and inside the tr we have the h. Okay, so in here is basically the heading. You can say name, or maybe let's say email, or etc. And in the t body here we have the r as well, and then inside in here we have the td. All right, so let's set the name into, let's say, John Doe, and email, let's say john@gmail.com. okay, so if I save, as you can see here, the name we have John Doe, and the email we have john@gmail.com. so let's styling this a little bit, and basically I'm going to, let's remove this import React, and I'm going to import the table.css. let's say /table.css. Alright, so let's go to table.css here, and I'm gonna grab the table, and let's give a background red so we can see this is work. And as you can see here, this is work. So what we can do in here is I'm going to say border collapse into collapse, and we're gonna set the maximal width into, let's say, 900 pixel, and also I'm gonna set the width into 100%, and also let's give a margin to RAM for the top and bottom, and auto for the left and right, so the table is gonna be in the center, as you can see right here. So next, let's styling the th and the d, so we can just say table, let's say th and table d. And what we are going to do here is I'm going to set the border into, let's say, 1 pixel solid, and then let's say DDD. If I save, now as you can see here, and down here I'm gonna set the padding into, let's say, 8 pixel. Okay, so now save, and this is what we have. So let's make it bigger so you can see, and I'm going to close this console. So next we need to send this data table into this table component. So I want to say let's say data, set that equals to data table, and then we need to create another array. So let's say down here I'm going to say cons, let's say column, set that equals to array, and inside this array we have an object. Then inside in here I'm going to put the heading into, let's say, name, and let's copy that a couple of times here, and in here I'm going to set to email, and then let's say point. Okay, alright, so we need to send this column into this table component as well. We can say column, set that equals to column. Okay, so let's go to the table.js component, and we can grab these props, which is data and column. So next, let's remove this, all the th here, and in here I'm going to map through the column, let's say column.map, and I'm going to grab the item and the index, and in here I'm going to returning a component. So the component name is going to be table head item. So let's say table head item. We don't have yet, but let's create down here table head item. So we can just create in here, let's say cons table head item, set it equals to, it's gonna be arrow function here, and we need to returning th in here. All right, so let's do like so, and in table item here we need to send the item, let's say item set equals to item here, come from here for individual item. We grab from here, right, this individual object here. So now here we need to grab the item, And then now we can access this item dot heading. All right, so we can just do in here, let's say item dot heading. All right, so now let's try to save and let's see what we have in browser. As you can see, we have name, email, and phone. It's come from here. All right, if you change this to, for example, let's say full name, and it's going to be updated. All right, that's pretty cool. So what we need to do next is we need to render the content into this table here. Okay, so as you can see here, the content inside in here, we need to render in here. Okay, so how do we do that? Let's go back. The first thing I'm going to showing you is how the table work. So this dr is gonna be the one row. Okay, if I copy and paste that here, okay, now we have two tr, right? So if I save, now we have two content here. All right, so two row. That's why we need to map through the tr, not the th, like this table head item, as you can see here. Okay, so now we need to remove everything here, and we need to map through the data, not the column, because the data is have 10 items. Okay, this item here we need to render in here. Okay, and now we need to say data dot map. We grab the item and the index, and in here we need to render the table row component. Okay, we don't have yet, but we're gonna create that, so we need to send first. So item set it equals to item. So let's create the table row, const table row set it equals to, we grab the item props, and in here what we need to do is I'm gonna log first so you can see what we have inside this item. If I save and let's inspect, all right, something wrong in console. Yeah, because we don't returning anything here. So let's say return, let's say tr. Okay, so now save and let's refresh, and as you can see here we have an object, as you can see. So what we are going to do now is basically, as you can see here, we can access the name just by say item and put the string here, let's say name. Okay, if I save, now we get all the name. Okay, that's the idea basically. So we need to grab the name or the phone, email here come from the column. Okay, come from here. So in here we need to add another key value. So I'm gonna say value, let's say name, and let's say value, I want to say email. Just make sure you have the same key, email. All right, and phone, so we can say value and it's gonna be phone. Okay, so now we need to send the column array into the table row component, so we can say column here. All right, so now we can access the column in here. Let's say column. Okay, so of course now we can access the value. Okay, but remember this is array, we need to map through. Okay, so I'm gonna remove that first. So I'm gonna return in here and I'm gonna say tr. All right, so inside in here I'm gonna map through the column. Okay, so let's say column.map, and I'm gonna grab the column item, okay, and the index, and also in here I'm going to return td. All right, so inside of td I'm gonna grab the item, and then remember I've already showing you the example, which is name. Now we can access the value from the column here. Individual object is the column item, right? So in here I can do, and let's say column, and let's put a column item here, column item dot value, because we need to access this value here. Okay, And now if I save, now as you can see we have all the data. But how if I want to showing the city, for example? As you can see, city is inside the address object. So let's try that. So in app.js here, I'm going to copy and paste. It's going to be the city, and the value is going to be address.city, right? And if I save this and let's take a look, as you can see, this is empty. That's because in the table here, what happened is the item here is going to be like this. Okay, item, and then the address and dot the city. Okay, not going to be work. Okay, but if we just grab the value like this, name, username, email, we can just simply put the value in here. It's like a name, right? Email is going to be work. But how to fix this issue? Of course, we need to add another condition in here. So let's add a if statement in here. So inside in here, we're going to add a if. All right. So if the column item dot value dot include let's say dot, right? We need to create a variable first. Let's say item split, so that equals to, it's going to be column item dot value dot split. We're going to split the value, okay, and the result is going to be like this. Okay, for example, this is going to be address, and the second value is going to be the city. Okay, like so. Let's say return oh really, return td, and we need to say item, and then we need to access the item split. All right, we need to access the 0, which is the address here. Okay, and then we need to say item split 1. Okay, we need to access the city in here. All right, so if I save this, as you can see, we should see the city. And yeah, I think that's it for this video. Thank you so much everyone, and see ya.